I am Quentin Collins, alum and Associate Director of the Solstice MFA in Creative Writing program here at LaSalle University. For those of you joining us for the first time tonight, this is the program's 20th anniversary. So, welcome to the fifth in a series of 8 evening readings taking place here in Auburndale, Massachusetts, as part of our July 2026 10-day residency, start of fall semester. Tonight's reading is one of my greatest highlights of every residency. You will soon hear from our 4 graduating students, writers who have toiled for 2 years, perhaps not always consecutive, across 4 semesters and now 5 residencies. The work they will present represents not only their commitment to writing craft, but also how much they gave to and received from this community we hold dear. Congratulations to Shane Patrick Dowling, Beth Haverkamp Powers, J.B. Snyder, and Peter Meidlinger. All right, and now for tonight's proceedings. First up, we will have graduating fiction student Shane Patrick Dowling, who will be introduced by Fiction for Young People and Adults faculty member Adi Rule. Then we will have graduating poetry student Beth Haverkamp Powers, who will be introduced by poetry faculty at large Kathleen Aguero. Then we will have graduating fiction student J.B. Snyder, introduced by fiction, creative nonfiction, and comics and graphic narratives faculty member Jennifer Mervin. And then we will conclude with graduating poetry student Peter Meidlinger, who will be introduced by poetry faculty member F. Douglas Brown. Adi, come on up.
Shane Patrick Dowling thinks deeply about everything he puts on the page. Paragraphs, sentences, words, punctuation, white space. He chews over characters' dialogue, movements, thoughts, points of view. He is dedicated. He is meticulous. And he loves words. In workshop, he gives the same fervent attention to his fellow writers' pieces, speaking of craft with infectious earnestness and attention to detail. Shane digs deep. Why is this thing the way it is? Who does it this way? Who does it differently? Where do I fit in? His creative thesis, Renaissance Girl, is a novel about a fledgling mixed martial arts fighter. Picture it. Drew skipped forward as if for a lead leg round kick. After her opponent dodged, she went for a round kick of her own. But Drew's skip was a feint, a prediction of Claudia's backward evasion, and Drew intercepted this attack with a kick that both switched her stance and cracked against the side of Claudia's face. The fight scenes are vivid and visceral, and so are the scenes of introspection, the hum of the city, first love, the scent of Drew's corned beef mingled with Madison's hollandaise sauce, and for a moment, it was as if they could taste each other's meals. We are sad to see you go, Shane, but it will be a joy to see where your imagination takes you. Friends, it is my honor and delight to introduce to you graduating student Shane Patrick Dowling.
Thank you so much, Adi, for that fantastic introduction. That was so kind. Thank you. Hello, everyone. It's great to be here with you all. I want to thank my parents and grandmother and the rest of my friends and family for the support they've given me throughout my time in this program, as well as my mentors David, Jen Mervin, and Adi, and all of the other excellent professors who shaped me into the writer I am today. Lastly, a huge thank you to Meg and Quentin for fostering the spectacular Solstice community, and thanks to all my current and former peers for being a part of it. As most of you know by now, my novel Renaissance Girl is about an impoverished fighter's climb to the top of mixed martial arts. But more than that, it's about her building the support system she's always needed and discovering she's capable of so much more than she thought. This scene takes place at the end of the first arc, where the protagonist Drew is about to finish her first amateur fight against Claudia, which she needs to win if she's going to keep her apartment, while Pat Danvers, Drew's idol and the former top contender for the belt, is watching high in the stands, curious if any of the women here tonight will prove they have what it takes to train under her and become a star. Content warning for violence and self-harm. The sound of the bell could barely be heard amidst the raucous assembly. No one, not even the media who had gone out of their way to blow this card out of proportions Pat deemed appropriate, had expected such a sharply contested first match. Drew's diffident demeanor and supposedly non-existent experience had morphed her into the underdog, but as that last exchange had shown, one who is more than capable of winning. Her damp feet pressed firmly into the mat as everything seemed to fade away but the sensations of her body. The aching of her arms, her legs, the all-encompassing light stinging her vision, strands of sweat down her back, her busted lip, the mulberry bruise forming under her right eye, the haste of her breathing. There was such pain in her throat she felt as if she had spent the whole day encased in a frozen lake. She was cold yet boiling. Every drop of adrenaline, of blood, surged through her veins with hot speed, and she felt it all like she had never felt before. Her opponent trudged forth with large steps. She appeared to be in no better a position, nor any worse. When Drew had sent her crashing to the ground, she had looked at Claudia with what might have been pity. Then, as she turned, out of the corner of her eye, she had seen Claudia's rage at this expression. She hadn't meant it that way. She wasn't apologetic about giving it her all. It was what came next that scared her, made all the worse by what she now saw had replaced that anger in Claudia's slowly approaching, ardently smug smile. Respect. The collision had unlocked something in her she wanted to forget, something she could use to end the fight, to win, though the thought of doing so nearly made her vomit. She did not want to go back to that time, and as she sat gasping for air in the corner, she had considered abandoning this new plan. But how could she? What choice did she have? This wasn't just about her pride. It meant having a home to go back to. As both women clashed fists for what she thought would be the last time, Drew closed her eyes and began to dream. The roars of the audience dimmed significantly in this slow final round, though it took a lot of wobbling around the arena. Two enervant bodies attempting to replenish all the energy they could muster to not only protect themselves but maintain an aura of fortitude, lest the ref call a TKO. When the striking started, it established a familiar rhythm. Drew on the defensive, Claudia in the lead. A few punches smacked into Drew's shoulder and one into her face, but a front kick to Claudia's stomach pushed her far away. It was amazing how quickly the human body tired out, Drew thought, yet just as amazing how it could keep going with nothing in the tank. Claudia's gait was unsteady, but mixed with a few peppy bounces as if to show she was still in it. Drew admired that about her, her endurance, her strength. She was fun to fight. Drew wished she could have done so in a less grave situation. Up high in the stands, some viewers seemed to come to sad acceptance with reality. That this was a bout between two teenagers who had not yet built up their stamina to that of the pros. Many remained unwavering, however, leaning on the edges of their seats to see who would claim victory from this tumultuous match. Pat was in neither camp, though unfortunately she leaned more toward the former. It was getting late, and she felt quite sleepy all of a sudden. She felt bad for the girls. Here they were, trying their hearts out, yet her mind was on dinner again. She shook her head and tried to reroute her attention back to the fight. Those two had worked hard and genuinely impressed her. But it was not enough. They were better than average, sure, for such inexperienced rookies. Pat hoped they would go far. She thought about congratulating each of them while making it clear she was continuing her search. Then the thought of their faces lighting up as she approached made her upset. This spark, this unmistakable yet indescribable thing she was looking for, it simply was not there, though truth be told, she thought she had seen it for a moment. Ms. Danvers? Joseph stared at her patiently. He had asked her a question, but she had not heard him. He looked at his crew. Some shrugged, others flitted their eyes about as if unsure what to say. He turned to Pat and was about to reiterate, but a voice stopped him. It's going to be tough, but I think she can do it. He now faced Jasleen, who had come slightly over from her seat to get closer to the mic. She was gazing with calm focus at the unfolding fight. Ms. Johal, we'd love to hear your insights as well. It had been some time since she had spoken, as due to the rarity of Pat's televised appearances in the modern day, there was a tacit agreement to let Jazz's co-workers pick that intractable brain of hers. Joseph continued, So, you think there's still hope? Pat's not so sure it will be by decision. What are your thoughts on that front? The microphone zipped to her face like a pebble dropped into a pond, though it did not ripple the water. True. If it comes to that, it likely will go to Claudia. But the round is still young, and you never know what may sway the judges. She caused quite the stir only a minute ago. Pat was now half paying attention to their conversation, but the other half was with the match. Drew was doing something equal parts strange and concerning. She let her arms down as Claudia hovered just a hair out of range. Had Pat been a regular member of the audience, she might have mistaken this for the end, a sign of Drew's vitality drained to the absolute minimum. But she noticed something the others failed to. This act did not originate from exhaustion. Rather, it was deliberate, shockingly so. Of Drew's intentions, Pat had only an inkling. She just knew that, whatever this was, it was not her way of giving up. You can say that again, said Joseph, responding to Jasleen. If she wants a chance of getting an all-star trainer, she's going to have to resummon that kind of energy. Pat's eyebrow twitched. You know, I never said. Then she went silent, as did everyone else in the venue. With a hesitant glance at the referee, Claudia delivered a cross that smashed into Drew's face with a loud smack. Then, as if she hadn't been hit at all, Drew dealt a hook to Claudia's head. Then another. And another. By the time the third punch made contact, Drew was already reaching to seize Claudia's shoulders. She did so and pulled her in for a left knee strike, then crashed her left fist into Claudia's jaw. Claudia was so close to her, she felt the full force of the blow, the vibrations shivering up Drew's arm into her fist, the flexing of her tendons, the bones of her knuckles, the way in which she pushed forward so fast, so deeply, that Claudia's face maintained contact until the arm was thrust as far as it could go, freeing her at last. She staggered backward several steps before a horrible impact laced into her belly. Drew was tackling her, now on top with a hurricane of fiery punches, each carrying tremendous heat. She trapped Drew's leg with her own and tossed her off and rolled back to gain space. But Drew was already coming, lunging at her from a low stance, then a high one, a look of profound rage cast across her face. Hatred, desperation, satisfaction, assuredness. These and innumerable other emotions were swirling amid Drew's mind, but Claudia's was a mystery. After all, while Drew may have been running toward her, looking at her, it wasn't really her she was seeing. At this point, the crowd was erupting louder than they ever had before. People were standing, shouting, wailing, smacking their palms so hard they began to sting. Joseph and his crew were taken aback, and to the same extent, so was Jasleen, unable to mutter a single word. None of them looked over to see Pat's reaction. Claudia dodged a right haymaker and got behind Drew. When Drew's fist collided with the cage, she opened her palm, pushed off, and sent an elbow careening into Claudia's nose. She followed with a jab, a cross, then a round kick, the last attack striking her waist. Claudia jumped back and Drew pursued with a right hook. Without needing to parry it, Claudia looked at her viciously and intercepted with the same move, nearly breaking Drew's jaw. Drew recovered confoundingly quickly and attempted another, which Claudia evaded. She could not evade the skipping sidekick that pounded into her chest. She slid away as if on rainwater and put up her arms, ready. And so was Drew. And at least until, out of the corner of her eye, a lock of hair swept in front of her face. The visibility was not a problem. She was used to fighting with her hair flailing around. It was the color of these strands, the bright gold in a black sea, like the sun eclipsed by the moon, that made her think of a little girl sitting at a desk, scribbling down notes, listening to the teacher, trying to, watching her tears go plop, plop, plop on her paper, taking her pencil and digging it into her wrist. Drew awoke to what she first assumed might be heaven, but the pain in her head told her it was not. A suffocating brightness beat down on her, and there was a face wreathed in shadow. There was noise, of what kind she wasn't sure. She felt herself being lifted slightly. Someone was talking to her. She blinked a few times and twisted her neck faintly to the left. A person was standing, arms soaring out and upward, as if trying to touch the ceiling. And somebody was holding their outstretched arm. They had their backs to Drew. "Can you stand? Are you all right?" Drew looked again at the face. It was a man she did not recognize. There was a woman to her left with her arm supporting Drew's back. They helped her get to her feet. Standing there, bathed in the light of the gym masquerading as a stadium, Drew became cognizant of what was happening, what had happened. The figure with upraised arms, with tousled, dirty blonde hair, spun around, revealing herself to be Claudia. She had her hands on her hips in her typical self-assured grin. Wordlessly, she walked closer and stuck out her glove. Drew's gaze drooped like a dipping bird toy. She stared at it without expression. Her arm inched forward and her hand clasped it as firmly as she could muster. Then, as soon as Claudia had turned away, Drew marched toward the cage's door, breaking past the arms of staff who tried to stop her, shoving it open, going down the steps, walking quickly, then sprinting in the direction of the back exit, her feet pounding the rough ground as she burst out into the cold of the oh-so-familiar city streets. The enormous, dusky venue emanated unbridled energy, though not as much as during Drew's rampage. Nevertheless, the crowd's cheers were earnest and directed at both contestants for a match well fought. Claudia had close to as many fans as Drew did, and after scanning the ring for a few seconds, she shrugged and pumped her fist in the air once again. The MC wore greater concern. If Drew was up, she was supposed to stand side by side with her opponent for the formal end of the match. But they had a schedule to keep, and bad sportsmanship wasn't about to derail the unsettled fights. He pecked at his mustache and adjusted his paisley tie. Swaths of onlookers stood tall, clapping, hollering, or scooching by one another to use the washroom or go out for a smoke. Claudia was over on one side of the octagon, clutching the bars and chatting giddily with her coach, who had on a big smile. Her impassioned vivacity was as apparent as ever, only now it was tempered with deep, breathless exhaustion. She slumped down against the grate and rested her back. Layla reached up to place a hand on her shoulder. Meanwhile, at the top of the stands was something peculiar. Joseph Harmon and his encircling camera crew were looking somewhat frantically to and fro. Next to him was a woman dressed in a jet black suit and matching pencil skirt. She was searching as well, a bit more nonchalantly. The MC witnessed this commotion and surveyed the ash-gray seating, but all he saw were people climbing down it and passing by the pillars at ground level. The entire venue swam with shadowed bodies like minnows in a crepuscular pond. So dense and rapid was all the movement, but the former MMA star was nowhere to be found. In fact, she was still in the gym, just blended in with the mass. She waded through them while making an effort not to push and shove with limited success. A few folks recognized her as she brushed by their attempts to comment with nothing more than a "excuse me," before making it into more open space, striding toward the less populated back exit, seeing her bodyguard looking around and ignoring him, not caring whether he followed her or not, though it might be nice if he didn't, she figured, since that girl seemed like she might have more trouble the more people were around. She came to the door and plunged right on through. After all, it was not talent or training or courage or experience she was looking for, nor even the one left basking in victory at the end of this little match tucked away under a tranquil spot in the city that never sleeps. It was something far more than that. Thank you.
First of all, thank all of my friends in the audience who confirmed that I was the next introducer. Shane, I was so wrapped up in your story, I forgot. Order. Okay. As a child, did you ever play that game where you stare at one another to see who will blink first? Well, don't play that game with Beth. In her poems, at least, she never blinks or turns away from our foibles or her own. Her poems about teaching are both poignant and hilarious. On the poignant side, in Miscarriage, for example, when she misses an appointment to tutor a disabled student because she herself has just miscarried, rather than turn on the other teachers who are blaming and gossiping, she characterizes herself, quote, as failing a child a second time in so many days. While an internet search trying to help students find costumes for their play on the women's movement that are large enough for high school students, she writes. Without thinking, I type adult costumes into the search engine. Right when an angry dad bursts in to find his wayward kid. He stares over my shoulder to see every S&M leatherette dominatrix costume on the internet wide open on my screen. Beth writes with sharp humor about childhood, professional life, mothering, even her own illness. She has remarkable control over a wide range of tones. Some poems are tiny explosions. Others nod and wink. All attack hypocrisy and convention. All are infused with both irony and empathy. Her poems may seem straightforward, but they are layered and textured in a way that rewards rereading time and time again. I am very grateful to have worked with Beth on her creative thesis. Please welcome Beth Haverkamp Powers. You are in for a treat.
Thanks, everyone. It's really, really an honor to be here. It has been an honor to be a part of the Solstice community. And for me, it's been a long time coming. I want to thank Meg and Quentin. I want to thank my cohort colleagues, a lot of people in the alumni group who have been here with me for a long time. But I am very, very glad to be here. Thank you for the compassion and the patience to get me here. I'm reading from my creative thesis entitled Burrs and Bombs, B-A-L-M-S, but I had some fun with that auditory pun. I'm starting with a poem that's offensive. It's called Offense. My father-in-law gave me a burqa for Christmas in hopes that it might make me quiet down a little about human rights. I donned it over my pregnant belly, draped the thick black veil over my head, cloth covering my mouth, as he'd wished, I guess. I grabbed a gilded Quran as a prop, began to dance, and sang, American woman, stay away from me. And everyone laughed, and they said what a good sport I was being, not to take offense. They got out the karaoke machine, and then the camera, and I waddled and swayed in front of the tree, festive and sanguine. I could take a joke, roll with an insult, but baby kicked me hard. My performance is now legendary on Famille, although when I recount the story, my daughter's foot still jabs my ribs. Little information on this next one. In 2016, as part of the first travesty, a group of women began to wear the clothes of the Hulu show, The Handmaid's Tale, and I was one of the handmaids who went to various state legislatures and the Capitol around the country in silent protest. Handmaid's confession. Bless me, Mother Margaret, for I have sinned. It's been more than 30 years since I read your novel. I'm not worthy to wear the red cape, white bonnet, modesty wings, those symbols of rarefied fertility in your dystopia. but only say the word and I shall be healed. In reality, I'm a handmaid past expiration date, a barren breed sow, body parts tumored, then excised, not whole, but fragmented, shattered. So why do I impersonate a handmaid? It's the blood red symbolism, like my mangled left breast, inflamed and swollen with infection and stitches. I open the Johnny for a plastic surgeon after 2 surgeries fail to rid me of cancer. He frowns and says, "What a mess." Then he turns to my flabby, drooping, utilitarian, but then healthy breast and winces and sighs and quips, "I can fix that too." I'm going to move to some family poems, just a couple. But I am a teacher, and so I've got some vocabulary in here. Don't worry, I'll define it. Apiciapesis. My father is known for a rhetorical device used to imply that which cannot be said. He never finishes his thoughts, although his unuttered rules are clearer than language. Master of the poison pen, he knows how Finnegan's Wake begins and ends. He can make a will so airtight it... My sisters and I are always annoyed when he starts a sentence and then, for years, the trait elicited much in the way of loving parody. Now look, you can't just... We could easily fill in the vacuum of the unspoken. Leave your melting popsicle stick on the new coffee table. Peel off the Chevy's wood paneling by scraping the fence. Come into the house with a blackened eye and a torn dress. Ironically, it is sometimes used to employ, to show that the speaker is overcome. Who would have known then, when he picked up a baseball bat to confront a boy who punched his youngest, that he could speak so clearly and so completely? "Son," he said, "it's time for you to leave." His love for us was rarely spoken, but just as articulate. And so I tell my dad, well, this is a fairly new poem. And as my daughter, who is on the live stream, said, "You had it too." It's called Sargassum Rash. Bloom of blisters on your upper arm made you cry, not in pain, but shame. The sea lice, invisible, their sting staining your smooth skin. You are a grown woman regressing. I buy you cream at La Farmacia and tell you to buck up. But your tears raise a welt of mother guilt in me. It burns and cloys. The itch persists. You remember all my bad parenting, recite a litany, the time I left you at sleepaway camp when you were 10 and miserable, that night at the resort, we go to bed early. My skin crawls with a lifetime of fears. I pick at the scabs of regret and inadequacy. You furiously text your friends stateside. In the morning, all their horrified sympathy leaves you triumphant. A story of survival against all odds, against me, again. My arms feel bloody and infected. They open wide for you. I have a couple of poems from my neighborhood. This one is called Wilson. A portly chocolate lab, he wandered the neighborhood like a need made flesh. Red-rimmed eyes weeping at the corners, moving block to block with the slow gravity of the determined. A door left ajar, and you might find Wilson polishing off the last of the kibble from your dog's bowl, or hauling himself up your carpeted stairs to collapse in your laundry pile, exhaling into your dirty sheets like he'd found the one place that smelled enough like home. He shouldered through trash cans when neighbors forgot their lids. He learned the neighborhood's doggy doors by heart, slipping through rubber flaps into warm kitchens like a ghost who only wanted lunch. Mothers walked the block, strollers rolling, dogs heeling, trading Wilson stories the way neighbors trade weather, constantly, almost fondly. Who could be angry at a fat, grinning chocolate lab? Then the screen on the Karpowicz's porch gave way, had been giving way for months, and Wilson began to bring his boy. Red hair, roomy eyes. The boy had thumbs, which Wilson lacked, so together they made a kind of whole. Dog nosing open the slider, boy raiding the fridge, both of them blinking in the cool refrigerator light. One afternoon, Mr. Karpowicz came home early to find them there, strange boy, strange dog, while his own sons circled the block on their bikes, oblivious. He called to tell me, said he had a right mind to march them both home and say something. He asked me which house they belonged to. When I told him, he went quiet. He knew the house. It was an open secret that things were not right at Wilson's house. This one's for Stanley. Outage. Power goes out on the road so frequently in winter that the neighbors expect it, call each other on still charged cell phones, ask about candles or generators, who can still flush and shower. Ice storms, wind gusts, wet spring snows bring the canopy of branches crashing down on fragile lines otherwise ignored. Walk the road in summer, thick leaves, dappled sun, tunnel of moss-cushioned rock, ceiling of green. Above the neighborhood sing invisible lines that charge their lives, hum and buzz. God, too, floats silently above the road, oblivious to the possibility of an outage. In the careless embrace of the morning, a blue sedan speeds, swerves, never slows before the explosive shock. Neighbor's dog skids on dry leaves, heaves and groans. The cavities of his body fill like a balloon of blood. His gums turn gray, a final jolt of running paws. Darkness. Power goes out on the road. I do write a lot about school, and I have such a strong ambivalence about that place. And so I just have a couple to conclude from the section on school. And this one gets at some of that ambivalence. On teaching St. Francis and the Sow, I say, I like St. Francis. He's the garden statue with a bird in his hand and a rabbit at his feet. I see their empty eyes and begin again. St. Francis is a Franciscan, like Friar Lawrence in Romeo and Juliet. Remember how he knew about plants and flowers? How he could make a potion to put Juliet in a death-like sleep? I see now I'm doing the same, putting people in a death-like sleep. But a few look at me in recognition of the Shakespeare reference. My brain casts about for something to hook them. St. Francis, I say, is the Snow White of saints. Remember when all the woodland friends love on her in the forest? There, now they'll understand. But no, not these kids who know Disney princesses where they save themselves and have a variety of skin tones. Finally, I wonder aloud for them my conversation with Cannell, modeling reflection. And why does he think a sow is lovely? I say after I define sow. In response, a kid finally giggles, teats. He said teats. And here's the last one. This is a newer one. This one is called American Poetry Lesson, Room C1015. I loaf and I invite the scroll. Like a patient etherized upon a cable. The only emperor is the emperor of my screen. We real cool. We AI school. Lying in a hammock on William Duffy's farm in Pine Island, Minnesota, taking selfies for my Insta. Tell me what it is you plan to do with your one wild and precious phone. What happens to a screen deferred? And miles to scroll before I sleep. And miles to scroll before I sleep. Thank you, everyone.
Oh, thank you. Hi, everyone. What an honor to hear our graduating students read. This has been amazing. Thank you, Shane. Thank you, Beth. So great. In Scotland, the art of weaving is inherently a practice and identity. Patterns inspired by one's home landscape, colors created by local roots, leaves, and berries, looms crafted to become an extension of the body itself. It's not a huge leap to say that for Jay, the art of weaving, an art alongside other handmade crafts such as baking, sits alongside the art of writing, each element of his fiction drawing from and engaging with land, history, culture, and identity. In Scotland, clans declare themselves through specific tartans. These garments are worn not to divide from others, but to inspire kinship and community. I wonder if Jay were to weave a tartan for his time in Clan Solstice, what colors would he use? The deep brown of a wild turkey, the striking red of an editing pen, the cool blue of a Massachusetts winter sky. And deeper embedded, the patterns of 5 residencies overlapped with 20 packets, the stitches of thousands and thousands of words, a pattern as transfixing and immersive as the Scottish sea full of selkies. In Jay's novel, The Aura, protagonist Liam is transformed, quite literally, by a visit to his Scottish home place. The novel asks, what does it mean to be from where we are from and to live somewhere far away from there? What would it mean to return? Who were the people who came before us, and how did the shadows they cast create patterns of our lives that indicate to others who we are? What does it mean to be transformed, not just internally, but our very bodies? The question, if you were an animal, what kind of animal would you be? Not just a conversational game, but a deeply thoughtful meditation on what it means to be human, to be historical, to be political, to be a body open to the possibilities of magic. It has been a gift to mentor Jay, not just through his critical thesis, but also his creative thesis. And to know Jay is to know that he is a generous reader, a thoughtful writer, an inspired researcher, and a weaver of both shawls. Yes, I'm showing it off. Thank you, Jay. It is 100 degrees and I'm perimenopausal. I'm wearing it anyway. That should say a lot. A weaver of shawls and also of tales. A word of warning before we settle in. If your great-grandfather once romanced a selkie, maybe be careful walking by the water's edge. Please help me welcome Jay Snyder.
Thank you, Jen. I teased her last residency when I introduced her and said that she has this Genergy that she brings. Yeah. And she truly does. And that helped me get through both that critical thesis and finishing up the creative. I also do have to thank my other two mentors I had, Venice Berry and Sandra Schofield, both of which I don't think I'd be here without. And of course, Meg and Quentin. And all of my friends, both graduated and soon to be graduated, and those who are, I have to unfortunately leave behind. The novel, The Aura, the section I'm going to read has to do with, he's just getting ready, Liam, our main character, is just getting ready to leave Scotland. He's been given this amulet that he's not really sure what's going to happen with it. And we'll see one of the weird things that happens with it. I looked into her eyes. Within their darkness, there was a light the type I had never seen. Her delicate yet strong body moved with a ballerina-like gracefulness. In her voice, I heard the music of my past, my ancestors, in the lilting way she spoke. There was simply this aura, this calmness about her that made my very soul feel like it was home. I paused, and I found the words I needed to say. You know, I could change my plans and stay. Maybe get to know you better? Sean had laughed. I know you could, but I have an additional gift among Selkies. It's the gift of prophecy, and I know that you have something special to do. Strangely, though, this time I cannot see what it is that you must do. Yet it's there, and you need to fulfill it. She paused, and I took in her words. I wondered at all of it and what this prophecy could be. I'd come there to find my way, myself, and after what felt like years of searching for who I really was. In a way, as I was leaving, I had found part of myself in the ruins of the Morrison home site just by being there. And yet this strange new chapter seemed to be opening for me with meaning Shawned. Hearing that I quite possibly looked like my great-grandfather, whom I had never seen even a photograph of, and this strange amulet around my neck. I found myself leaving and yet sensing that there was going to be a profound change in my life. Shawned broke the silence. It's time for you to go. It's quite a walk back to Stornoway. Will you walk with me, I asked, expecting her to refuse. Shawned hesitated, then smiled. I will come part way with you. We walked along in silence. About a half a mile from town, we stopped. Shawned kissed me lightly and turned to walk away. I started to follow, but I knew that I should not. As much as I was pulled toward her and felt that I should simply throw away my life outside of being there with her, something also pulled me equally to go. It felt that although being here was right, the time was not. I watched her until her form was beginning to grow harder to see, and when I turned, I thought I heard her voice in my head. Don't worry, Liam. We will meet again. I reached the bed and breakfast and headed to my room to collect my things. "Where have you been?" asked Mora, the owner, as she came from around the front desk. "I wish you'd let me know you would not return. I cooked you a meal." "I met a cousin over on by the far shore and stayed there. Sorry if I worried you." "I was worried that you may have gotten washed out to sea. The waves have been restless here lately. A change is coming." There was a change coming. I could feel it. It was a palpable and strong feeling that things were somehow going to be very different for me once I left. Along with this was the feeling that part of me was remaining here. I thanked her for her concern and the meal I didn't eat, and she shook my hand. After I checked out of the bed and breakfast, I walked to the ferry, headed to Glasgow. The air seemed different this time as compared to when I arrived. There was still the crisp and briny scent of the sea, yet there was another feeling aside from the cold as the wind came, and with it the spray from that sea. Was the difference the air, or was it a difference in me? In my view of the possibilities yet to come? What was it in me that changed from this visit? The ruins of the Seat Morrison clan were not as I expected or hoped, yet in some way, maybe they were. I was reminded of the story of the phoenix that dies through fire and rises from its own ashes. I was also reminded of how Christians believe they are reborn after their immersion into water. Could my near drowning and rescue by Shaunid be a form of this own rebirth? If so, rebirth into what form? She was a Selkie who rescued me, no spiritual savior. Yet there was something about her presence, about how I felt in her presence, that made something deep within me feel new. And in that newness, there was a pull from the past that seemed to seek not to take me backward, but propelled me toward the future. Crossing the channels, I saw a family of seals playing near the ferry. It was as if they swam for a while as an escort for us. The captain and passengers were amazed, and I noticed one seal looking at me. When it leapt from the water, I saw the same patterned seal skin that had been on Snyder's cot. As the ferry continued, I saw this seal who remained still bobbing in the water, looking at me equally as intensely as I watched it. This was not a goodbye, but a farewell, for I knew that I would indeed return someday. Chapter 5. My head was still buzzing from the experience of meeting Shaunid as I made my way through the Glasgow airport. All during the train ride from Ullapool, I kept recalling my brief encounter with her. Part of me still thought it was all a dream, but I knew better. She was very real as what I witnessed on the island. It was very real that I almost drowned. It was very real that I saw her transform into a seal and back again. There was no mistaking our conversation and the amulet that hung from my neck. I spent a total of 9 days in Scotland, and yet it felt like a much briefer amount of time. I arrived at my gate just in time to make the call for initial boarding. As it would take a few moments for my section to be boarded, I stopped into the newsstand near the gate to see if I could find a newspaper. A headline from the New York Times mentioned a potential standoff between President Obama and Congress over his plans to institute universal health care and support same-sex marriage. And I shook my head in disbelief that either one of these notions would be controversial in the 21st century. My section was called. I boarded the plane and settled into my seat, and once comfortable, I read the inscription on the amulet. I had not thought to try to fully read it before now, as my mind was occupied with thoughts of Shaunid and making sense of it all. Turning the amulet over, the first word I could make out was Atharach. The next was Cluin. The final word I discovered was Gluis. A fourth word looked to be inscribed on the outer circle, but for some reason I couldn't make it out. It was faded. Atharach, Cluin, Gluis. Pronouncing them was easy. Knowing what they meant was something else. I decided to save looking up the definitions for when I had more sleep and could think clearly. The plane took off, and I fell asleep thinking of these words. I started dreaming of Shaunid and the strange events of my last day on the Isle of Lewis, the near drowning, the sealskin on her cot, her transformation, and when she gave me the aura all flooded into my dream. I awoke feeling strange. Not exactly nauseous, but sick. I hurried to the lavatory. After splashing some water on my face, I looked into the mirror and my face was changing. There was something very different about my face. Oh shit. My nose had elongated, became black, and hair rapidly grew along its length. A knock came at the door. Are you all right, sir? I'm not feeling very well. Did I just howl? Oh shit. Okay, sir, but let us know if you need anything. Okay. I managed to stifle another howl. Looking back into the mirror, I saw the hairs on my face begin to lengthen and cover what was now my muzzle. My ears had moved to the top of either side of my head and flopped in a triangular shape to the front. I closed my eyes tightly and opened them to now see that I resembled a Wheaten Terrier. I was no longer Liam Morrison, teacher and human, but a dog. Well, my face was that of a dog. How in the hell am I a dog-faced man? After the attendant left, I sat on the toilet seat, thankful that I was the first in the lab and everything was clean. I put my head in my hands. My nose was wet and cool to the touch. I ran my hand across my muzzle and along my triangular-shaped ears. There was no way I could go out like this. What was I thinking? There was no way I could live like this, aside from being an interesting circus sideshow exhibit. Liam Morrison, dog-faced English teacher, watches he howls Shakespeare and barks Chaucer. I'd be a real hit reading Whitman. I sound my barbaric yelp. The attendant knocked on the door again. Sir, are you okay? What if when I answered it came out as a bark? That would not be good. Do I try to speak or stay quiet? Again, sir, are you okay? I decided to risk it. I don't feel very well. Can I sit in here a little longer, please? Oh, we don't normally allow passengers to remain in the lab for long for safety reasons. Thinking quickly, I came up with an idea. I started hacking as if I were about to vomit. It's a good thing that dogs vomit pretty easily. I stopped making the noise and spoke. I could come out and get sick in the aisle or at my seat if you'd prefer. Please, give me a couple more minutes. Let me splash some water on my face. Okay, the attendant said reluctantly. Can I bring you a warm Sprite or something? Sounds great. Thank you. I appreciate your help. I heard her walk away from the door. Now I needed to find a way to change back before she returned. I splashed water on my face and stared in the mirror. Even more important, could I reverse this or would I keep changing until I was a dog entirely? How and why was this happening? Was it the words from the amulet? Did my saying them cause this? Come on, please, turn back. I really don't want to go to jail or be placed in a kennel. The attendant took a little longer than I expected to return, and that was a good thing because I did start feeling funny again. I looked into the mirror and saw the fur begin to shrink back into the top of my head. It felt like it was being gently pulled back through the skin. The few hairs that fell out disintegrated as soon as they hit the sink and the floor. My nose shortened and returned from black to my own peachy pale skin tone. And my head didn't hurt or twist in some odd way like in a horror movie or like I'd read in werewolf novels. It just simply shrank and I was normal again. There was another knock at the lavatory door. Sir? Yes, I'm coming out. She stood there with a cup of ice and a can of Sprite as I exited the lavatory. The look of worry on her face reassured me that she knew I was not trying to bring any harm to the aircraft, and it helped that my face was pale. I took the cup and the Sprite. Thank you. I'm sorry if I caused any trouble. The attendant smiled kindly at me. Not a problem. Are you feeling any better? A little. I'm sure this will help. Just in case, she said, handing me an emesis bag. I took the bag from her and went back to my seat. I felt absolutely spent. I was so tired that I fell asleep. About a half hour later, one of the flight attendants came to check on me. So, how are you feeling now? I'm feeling like myself again, thank you. Can I get you anything else? I'll just take some water, please. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Time to use all that deep breathing Tai Chi stuff I learned when I wanted to calm my mind after teaching high school students all day. As I breathed in, I pictured my breath coming in as a cool sea breeze. Then I thought about the walk I had taken with Shaunid when I was with her. The rocky shoreline, the sea oats growing in patches at the edge of the rocks, the soft look in her eyes whenever she spoke to me. Breathing out, I focused on releasing the anxiety and fear about my head becoming a dog's head. I started to wonder if it was going to happen again, though. The attendant left the water on my open seat tray with a small bag of pretzels. I opened my eyes and took a sip. I heard Sinead's soft voice again in my head. Everything is going to be fine. I shook my head and looked again at the amulet, reached into my bag, fumbled around a bit, pulled out my pocket dictionary, and proceeded to locate those 3 words. Athrak meant change. Cluin meant hear. Gluis meant move. That 4th word remained hard to decipher as the script was still faded and rather different than the others. I also did not want to take the chance of becoming a dog again before landing, so I didn't say those words out loud, thinking perhaps they were that catalyst. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe I was losing my mind. No, that was not it. I knew what I saw in the mirror. I had started to change into a dog. Why? That I didn't know. How? Part of me started to make the connection easily between the aura and my transformation. I tucked the amulet into my shirt, took a sip of the water, and watched the screen showing our flight path until we landed in Washington, D.C. And unlike during the trip to Scotland, I didn't think much of flying over the Atlantic on the way back. And I found that strange, but somehow it also made sense.
Good. And now for Pete. If I'm a sloppy-eyed mess every time I cry, Pete Meidlinger writes in his poem To My Sister Mary, maybe I saved up too many tears all these years. Maybe, perhaps, hard to tell any kind emotion is ever held back from the joyful and joyous Pete Meidlinger. I had the pleasure last fall of being Pete's mentor, and when we talked, our conversations were ripe with laughter and lament and sports, more laughter, sewn together by poetry. Yes, we were a sloppy-eyed mess. I was then and now always in awe of Pete's even-keeled disposition, his positivity and gratitude, not only towards me, but to life in general. This is captured in his poetry, which, for lack of a better term, beautifully focuses on domestic life, which is to say, the relationships between his family and those who he encounters. His written work, which you will hear in a minute, through a great diversity of forms, seeks to connect and build bridges. I expect nothing less in regards to relational thinking on the page from someone who is a retired professor of English. Many of us witnessed his brilliance as a teacher in his graduate lecture, Lingering Residence in Father Poems. With a great deal of grace, Pete moved about the room to answer questions or pose them to the class. Pete took us all by the hand to do what George Oppen says and beget the baffling hierarchies of father and child. And dare I quote, such waltzing is not easy. As an educator, as a poet, and in workshop, Pete creates a sense of belonging, the type that says in his jazz man cool inflection, we are here together. Rest your head on my shoulder, and later I will rest on yours too. Of belonging, Dr. Sean Ginwright, author and professor of Harvard Graduate School of Education, states, belonging is the capacity to see humanity in those who are not like us and recognize that the same elements exist within them also exist within us. Pete's work reaches the heads and hearts of his readers. Pete's manuscript, In the End Strangers, in many ways examines this, and he lives his life to understand Ginwright's wisdom as duty and daily practice too. Pete, we thank you for your witness and your smile, for the tint that colors your observation. Thank you for seeing us and letting us see you. Everyone, please help me welcome Pete Meidlinger.
The bottoms. In the bread factory in the bottoms of Omaha, we worked Satan's shift, $7 an hour, screwed to our posts all night long, feeding the slicers and wrappers to the roar of the ovens, the whirl of the fan blades, the fluorescent bulbs burning our eyes, eyes fighting off sleep, the mind running out of grooves to visit, each note a scratch on a vinyl record, like the thought of the doobie in our pocket. We'd toke on the dock before dawn to sedate what ached and awaken what lay dead. By sunrise, we gathered at the tavern on 9th in California to wash down bacon and eggs with Schlitz on tap before going home to sleep, till the shrieking breaks of the alarm clock broke our dreams. Midday, eyes half shut, we'd find our baker's jacket by the smell of dry flour and crawl back to the factory to make our daily bread. I've loved this program. I retired, which is like kind of getting out for good behavior. And I have had such good mentors. I want to thank Jose Angel Aragus, Ian Haley Pollock, Doug Brown, and Jennifer John. Each of them gave me a gift many gifts I didn't know I needed. So y'all, if you're new to this program, bring your rucksack. Take every gift that's offered. You may never know when you need it. And Doug asked me yesterday, is there anything you want me to say? And I said, yeah, Doug, I would love it if you would say, boy, for a white boy, he sure knows his NBA. Doug said, I can't do that. To my sister, Mary, 1951 to 2000. Dear Mary, I was in the dark about why we dropped you off in the dark of the truck stop in South Dakota. I was 12. I didn't bother to ask why you got in the woman's car, and we left without you. You were 19. Years later, prepping for a pancreas transplant, you told me you went to South Dakota because you were pregnant. We had to keep Dad in the dark. Your baby was stillborn. You buried him alone, 200 miles from home on Thanksgiving. Amy told me last year at Mom's funeral that you wouldn't have gone to South Dakota if given a choice. In all these years, I thought you had played the role of Iphigenia, the daughter sacrificed to fan the winds of war. I thought you had signed off on it, the way we always signed off on some hive of lies to keep him in the dark. Oh, the martyr we made you to hide our failures of courage, the limits of our love. We didn't sacrifice you. We betrayed you. We chose the familiar darkness and beg you to call it even. How about something lighter? This is for my son who's out there listening. So. Kanding, Taiwan. When my companion and I finally reached the southern tip of the island, weary beyond reason, we sat in the shade of a gazebo overlooking Ulanbi Lighthouse and the strait. We ate green onion pancakes and held sweet plums in our mouths until our tongues and teeth turned vermilion. I told her what I had seen. I mistook pelicans for cresting shoals, butterflies for falling leaves, armed warships for distant islands. I mistook monkeys for the rustling of bamboo trees and the braided limbs of the banyan for lovers' legs draped upon one another. She said, and uttered, Li. Oh, the Taoist idea of order in the universe, I too eagerly said. No, she said, Li, plums, like the one you're holding there in your hand, so delicious when plucked, wine red, and eaten while still warm. I've enjoyed everybody I've worked with here. The faculty at Solstice has been phenomenal. Thank you, Meg. Thank you, Quentin. Thanks to all of you I've had the chance to get to know and work with. We students are very, very lucky to have all of you. It's been great. I'm so happy to have Kevin join us. It's just like when I first came to the program, I saw some of the faculty were beginning to move on, phase out, and I thought, oh, no, I'm not going to get a chance to work with them. But surprise, surprise, I was able to work with other wonderful, wonderful faculty. It's a terrific, terrific program. In my creative manuscript, I've got a few poems that are all called Marnie, and they're all written they're all written in my mother's voice. And it's just this is an attempt to keep history alive and keep her stories alive. So they're called Marnie. That's what she was known by until she left her home to get married. And then she gave up Marnie, and she gave up far too many other things as well. Excuse me. So this one is called Marnie, the Farm, Buck Grove, Iowa, 1936. Dad lost the farm around the time Mother went away to die. I was 5. We had 4 horses, Dad's riding horse, 2 plow horses, and a skittish mare we kept for pity's sake. The dog shivered constantly. He had lain on the tracks as a train passed over him. The awful brakes screeched to keep the cars from jumping. The 2 dead cows tossed in the ditch. I'd left the gates open. From that day, the dog slept under the stove until he vanished. I thought he'd gone away to die too. One winter day, as I waited in the barn for my brother to light the kerosene lamp and take us inside, I saw the dog curled up inside the skittish mare's legs, and I lay alongside them like a half moon in the soft hay to get warm. Sometime you'll have to tell me if writing about nostalgic things is healthy or not, but not right now. I love, love, love going back to my childhood and things that are no longer there. So this one is called Skywave Propagation. You'll know what it means by the time we get to the end of the poem. Skywave propagation. Like Kirk, I yearned for worlds unknown. Transistor in hand, I'd climb past rusty nails and wasps' nests planted in the attic like surveillance devices. Late at night, as if I'd entered an interstellar CB radio club, the skies vibrated with underground rock from Chicago, blues from Nashville, Detroit's R&B, and on some clear nights, mariachi music from an unknown planet. Spock would have explained that medium frequencies travel farther at night when the lower layer of the ionosphere, no longer energized by sunlight, vanishes. Quiet, Spock. Just beam me up. Let me ride the curvature of this unknown Earth. I was practicing these poems in front of my wife, and she said, "You're not reading that one tonight, are you?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "Okay, well, as long as I'm not there." It's called Spring Bees. When the bees arrived in spring, I followed your lead and bent closely to see one bee thrusting and sucking as if in a frenzied orgy. Too delirious or duty-bound to notice me, he rubbed his sticky legs against the lily's flesh, dropping pollen into her petal baskets. The lilies welcomed the bee in, welcomed him to roll in their downy bed with satin sheets and make movements that will swell the tree's buds in the summer heat and grow branches that will hang heavy with fruit low enough for a child to pluck. Lucky bee, madly seduced by his calling, heeds the lily's lilting call to come and roll at their leisure and promise to come back for more. You call to me from inside the house. I go. I seek pleasure in my calling. This one's for my poetry peeps. I'm going to close things out, and I'm standing between you and dinner, so I'm going to close things out with a poem from my wonderful, wonderful poetry colleagues who have created just a community of trust and vulnerability and creativity, who in the kind of the words of, to paraphrase James Baldwin, who have we've taught each other that there's a difference between swimming in deep water and drowning. I'd rather plant trees, but I plant tap roots. When you plant trees, you dig holes 6 feet apart, enough room to lay a coffin, and drop in the burlap bag balls, pile the mulch high, and water them as if large leathery mammals. The taproot journey lacks the drama of the arabata you've seen on PBS, where frigate birds tuck in their bibs and await the newly hatched and juicy-necked turtles as they grope blindly to reach the sea. Taproots have their own Gallipoli. If they survive rains, mower blades, and Labradors, they will emerge around Easter, their tiny roots tunneling into the darkness. Spindly tendrils, finer than an infant's fingernail, puncture the soil and come into the light. In the morning, I get on my knees and pray on them, plucking one newborn plant after another from its cradle, giving permission to the strong to carry on with my blessings. Thank you.
Wow. Wow. We have one more round of applause for Shane, Beth, Jay, and Peter.